There was once a young man named Daniel, living in a bustling city, who seemed to have everything going for him. He had a steady job, a small group of close friends, and a loving family. But beneath the surface, Daniel was plagued by a constant sense of dissatisfaction. Every morning, he would wake up feeling as though the world was stacked against him. The weather was too gloomy, his commute was always crowded, and even his coffee never tasted quite right. Life, it seemed, was a series of inconveniences that Daniel could never escape. He carried this attitude with him everywhere. When a colleague received praise for a job well done, Daniel felt overlooked and bitter. If his friends laughed at a joke he didn't understand, he felt left out. Even the smallest setbacks, a late train, a forgotten umbrella, a misplaced document, were magnified in his mind, feeding a growing sense of frustration. To Daniel, the world was a place where things simply didn't go his way. One day, while waiting in a long line at the grocery store, Daniel stood tapping his foot impatiently, mentally cursing the slow cashier and the chatty customers. Lost in his irritation, he didn't notice the elderly woman ahead of him struggling to count her coins. When she finally finished, she turned and smiled apologetically. Instead of returning the smile, Daniel merely frowned and glanced away. Leaving the store, Daniel encountered an old friend, Claire, whom he hadn't seen in years. Claire had always been cheerful, even in the face of adversity. They exchanged pleasantries, and soon Daniel was venting about his day, the traffic, the crowds, the endless list of annoyances. Claire listened quietly, then asked, "Do you ever wonder what would happen if you changed the way you looked at things?" Daniel scoffed. "What difference would that make? The world is what it is." Claire smiled. "That's true, but sometimes the way we see the world is just as important as the world itself. Attitude changes everything." Daniel was unconvinced, but Claire's words lingered in his mind. That night, lying in bed, he replayed the events of the day. He saw the elderly woman's gentle smile and remembered the cashier's tired eyes. He thought of Claire's unwavering positivity. For the first time, Daniel wondered if perhaps he was missing something essential. The next morning, Daniel decided to try something different. He resolved to notice the good in each situation, no matter how small. As he stepped outside, the sky was gray and drizzling. Normally, this would put him in a foul mood, but today, he paused to appreciate the cool freshness of the air and the glistening raindrops on the leaves. At the train station, he smiled at the ticket clerk and thanked her genuinely. On the train, instead of scowling at the crowd, he listened to the hum of morning conversations and found comfort in the shared routine. At work, Daniel greeted his colleagues warmly and complimented his coworker on a job well done. When his computer crashed mid-project, he took a deep breath and used the downtime to jot down new ideas. He found that by focusing on solutions rather than problems, his frustration faded. The day was not perfect, but Daniel felt lighter, more capable, and oddly more connected to those around him. Little by little, Daniel's attitude began to transform his life. He started to recognize opportunities where he once saw obstacles. When a friend canceled plans, he used the free time to explore a new hobby. When he received critical feedback at work, he saw it as a chance to improve rather than a personal attack. He learned to laugh at minor mishaps and to offer help when others seemed stressed. Daniel realized that he wasn't exempt from life's difficulties, but he could choose how to respond. The change did not go unnoticed. His friends remarked on his newfound positivity, and his co-workers found him easier to collaborate with. Daniel's family appreciated his willingness to listen and support them. Even strangers responded to his kindness, a returned smile, a polite word, a gesture of gratitude. One evening, as Daniel walked home, he came across the same elderly woman from the grocery store, struggling with her shopping bags. This time, without hesitation, he offered to help. As they walked together, she shared stories of her younger days, filled with joys and sorrows, triumphs and regrets. Daniel listened, realizing that every person he met carried their own burdens and hopes. He thanked her for her wisdom, and she smiled, her eyes bright. "You know," she said, "life is much easier when you see it through grateful eyes." That night, Daniel reflected on how far he had come. He understood that changing his attitude did not mean ignoring the challenges of life. It meant choosing to face those challenges with resilience and hope. He realized that happiness was not something to be chased, but something to be cultivated. Every day offered 1,000 moments, some pleasant, some difficult, some utterly mundane. Each moment, Daniel now knew, was shaped by the lens through which he chose to view it. Over time, Daniel's life began to blossom in unexpected ways. He found joy in simple pleasures: a good book, a walk in the park, a shared laugh. He discovered new passions and built deeper relationships. People were drawn to his optimism, and he became a source of support for others. Daniel understood that the world had not changed, but he had. His attitude was the key that unlocked a life filled with meaning and possibility. Years later, as Daniel sat with Claire at a cafe, he thanked her for the advice that had transformed his life. Claire smiled and said, "The greatest lesson is that you have the power to choose your perspective. When you change your attitude, you change your life." Daniel nodded, knowing this to be true. He realized that attitude was not a shield against hardship, but a tool for growth. It was the difference between seeing a rainy day as an inconvenience or as a chance to dance in puddles, between feeling isolated or reaching out to connect, between fearing failure or embracing it as a teacher. The story of Daniel is not unique. Each of us faces moments when we feel overwhelmed or stuck. The world is unpredictable, and challenges will always arise. But by changing our attitude, by choosing gratitude over resentment, hope over despair, and compassion over indifference, we open ourselves to transformation. We discover that happiness is not found in perfect circumstances, but in the way we choose to respond. So the next time you find yourself frustrated or discouraged, remember Daniel's journey. Ask yourself, what would happen if I changed the way I looked at this situation? What might I learn? Who might I help? And how might I grow? Your attitude is your most powerful tool. It can turn obstacles into opportunities, strangers into friends, and ordinary days into extraordinary ones. As you move forward in life, carry this lesson with you. Change your attitude, and you will transform your life. Every day is a new chance to choose positivity, kindness, and resilience. The world may not change overnight, but you will, and that will make all the difference.